He's like a butterfly flapping his wings deep down into the forest, man. It's gonna cause a tree fall like 5,000 miles away, man. There ain't nobody seeing nobody. Man, see, like, you don't even know, man. It's like you're born into this world, man. And you got like that, man. The dust and wind, man. Or like the dang old candle, man. It don't matter, man. It's all the time.
See, Bird, as I was saying before we started recording, I think I just like tormenting you, right? Exposing you to like 85 IQ anti-Catholic bigotry and other nonsense. So,
yeah,
as I've said
it's
before,
become every time I've gotten an invite on the show is to experience some form of anti-Catholic bigotry.
Well, here's the thing. Whether it's Jack Chick or whether it's black nationalism, or in this case, schizophrenic, so-called classical liberals, I find all of this very funny.
Oh, me too. I thought you were going to say, I largely agree with their anti-Catholic takes. You? Like ask an innocent question.
Yeah. This is what it all is. It's a massive passive-aggressive scheme to just make my criticisms known of you personally, Bird.
Yeah.
But this is actually one of my longest running ones. And so I've been collecting the kind of schizo ramblings of the classical liberals, right? This is kind of the system of thought, centered around James Lindsay. And as crazy as he is.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
His reply guys, the guys who have bought in hook, line, and sinker, are even crazier. Like they're genuinely unwell people. And so
can I stop you really quick? So, okay, James Lindsay. I know a little bit about James Lindsay. We don't have to rehash all of James Lindsay's history, but I don't remember when it was. I think it was around Michaelmas when he was doing that whole thing about the Archangel Michael and how Catholic, there's like I don't think he was talking about all Catholics, right? He was saying there was a cadre inside Catholicism of woke rightists who actually worship Satan, who is the Archangel Michael. Can you explain to me specifically, is there a term, ideologically speaking, an ism for what he was trying to say? Because it was very foreign to me and I couldn't really go, I'd like to research what he means, but I'm not even really familiar with the kind of libtard, anti-Catholic, Michael worshiper thing that he was doing. Is that an established ideology?
As far as I can understand, no. And he has created this kind of schizoid school of what you could say like bibliographical schizo posting. Where, and believe me, I have like 30 different infographics which go into this, where effectively the general thought is that you have left wing and right wing woke. And woke functionally means everything that isn't like Bill Clinton or George H.W. Bush. And everything else is just sort of like putting lipstick on a pig. It's all after the fact justification. And so it gets very, very unhinged very quickly. And so look, if you're an audio listener, I will try my best to describe what is going on. But these are, by and large, the ramblings of insane people. So I would offer you...
Wasn't he claiming that Orrin McIntyre was secretly a Gnostic Catholic? Like what? It went very far. Like it went way beyond.
He also claimed that he was in some way connected to the Mesopotamian sorcerer Ahriman, and that he was in some way communing with sort of a keeper of secret style Mesopotamian demon. Actually, my last episode.
Orrin McIntyre was, you're saying?
Yes, and I know Orrin. He is a Southern Baptist. He is not Catholic.
That was my first impression. I'm pretty sure he's a Southern Baptist.
Which, never let the facts of the situation stand in the way of a particularly amusing conspiracy theory. But you'll notice in my last episode with Orrin, after his name, I put in brackets NHRM. Because every time Lindsay and his followers refer to Orrin McIntyre, like the Muslims referring to the Prophet, they include that acronym after every invocation to signify it's not his real name. He's basically created a personality cult around, to be honest, some of the funniest conspiracy theories I've ever seen. So what I'll start with is most of these I have in Photoshop, but this one was too complicated, so I just put it onto. I just took the image directly from Twitter, right?
Okay.
So what we have is, dude,
Okay.
this is so shallow.
Oh, I
compared to the
remember
depths.
this. I remember seeing this.
So what we have here is the political compass: left, right, authoritarian, libertarian, and at the
Yes.
bottom in big block letters it says "Communist attack, swing hard, left and into tyranny," and a hand-drawn red arrow going up and to the left.
Okay.
Then, in sort of a shadow path going down to the right, pendulum swing back should look like this towards rightward and liberty. Okay. But we have a solid red line going to the right, authoritarian, that says unnatural swing, exclamation point, artificial, exclamation point. Instead, all caps, fascist misdirection, swing hard back to the right, but not towards liberty. And then regression to leftism, the pendulum swing is gone, liberty is lost. So the idea is that fascists keep the political pendulum locked in the top quadrant away from liberty. You'll notice that there's really no backing to this. This is just sort of an autodidact theory of politics based off of like 2016 Instagram memes. And I thought this was funny just because it's quite literally it came to me in a dream. But the actual image that provoked me, and let me pull this up to do this stream with you, Bird. Let me pull this up. Is a handmade meme. Can you describe this, Bird?
So what we're seeing here is an image of multiple hands that are reaching up towards the top of the image. The hands, there's one hand that is much higher up, reaching higher up than the others, and there's three lower hands reaching towards the highest hand. The three lower hands seem to be weird colors. The highest reaching hand is
reaching out of hell, by the way.
That's true. There's flames at the very bottom of the image. And the highest hand, which is a Caucasian hand, let's just say it, because the other hands are different shades.
What race is the hand on the right? Is that a goblin?
The right, yes, there is a green hand. There is also a gray hand, and then there is also a similarly Caucasian colored hand. Anyway, the highest hand is reaching towards what appears to be some kind of dumbbell. And the bar of the dumbbell says idealism, and then woke right and woke left make up the different parts of the dumbbell. So the idea, I guess, is from hell, the white man reaches towards idealism, which at either pole is just wokeness.
That is my best bet of this. This was posted with no caption.
I am lost.
Well,
posted
I saw this.
No caption. Okay.
I saw this. I didn't know what it meant. I still don't at all. I was like, I have to keep digging because this is truly, truly bizarre behavior. So we have another one, right? This is somehow an even more confusing one. So we have sort of a scale of justice, if you will. By the way, I might add, James Lindsay is an atheist. He's written books about how he doesn't believe in God. This is an image that he created. So the base of this scale is reality, God. The shaft, I guess we would say, on the which the arm is balanced, is labeled truth. The fulcrum says realism. And then this is where it kind of falls apart because on the bar, on one side, it says liberals in quotes. On the right end, it says conservatives. And then it says realists to the conservative side, centrists, moderates to the left side. But the axis says realism. So you assume that realists would be the closest to realism. But on either side, you have leftist communists, rightist fascist Nazis, both labeled as idealists.
Uh-huh.
And in the bucket, so to speak, it says theories and grievances on both sides.
Right.
Which is one of the things that I picked up on, which is the idea that having any grievances at all, like just as a period, is a signifier of being woke. I don't really understand how theory relates with this. It seems that this itself is a theory. I'm curious, Bert, do you have any idea how to make this sort of scrutable?
No, okay. Now, obviously, what the image is trying to communicate is that rational centrist realism is as a balance. Okay, I'm sorry. The balancing scale is rational centrist realism. So that is to say, the measuring stick is rational centrist realism. Now,
based in the truth of God, apparently.
Yes, well, whoever posted this is one thing, but what the meme seems to be saying is that the objects within the scales on either side are grievance-based politics. And it is the scale itself which is designed to weigh grievance-based politics. I am a little bit confused, obviously, at the analogy here, because the object of measurement is a composite of metaphysical realism and theism, as well as moderate centrism, conservatism, and left liberalism. The objects being weighed are communism and fascism of various kinds, or rightism. I guess I hate the term rightism. It's so ridiculous because it's forcing a binary that doesn't really exist. Leftism doesn't mean this. Okay. Anyway, no, I don't quite understand what we're trying to learn here, because what I take away from the image is there's three different things to take away. The base of reality is God. Truth ascends from God, whatever locative you want to use there. Truth comes out of God, and then truth becomes an object that measures grievance politics. And part of the measuring stick is a dialectic between left and right, conservative and liberal, and centrist as well are in the middle. But the object being weighed is leftism and theories and grievance, and rightism and theories and grievance. So no, honestly, Burden, I don't know what the meme is trying to say, because on the one hand, we have a commentary on epistemology, right? I mean, it seems that the scale is an epistemological statement. The scale itself is saying a scale is an object that determines some quality of reality. And so every normal political part of the political spectrum is part of the scale that judges the reality. And the weight, or the thing that the scale is meant to judge, is theories and grievance. So honestly, and again, I'm not overanalyzing this, but you asked me to give my thoughts on it, so I'm trying to break down what it's trying to say. What I am seeing from this image is simply the statement, I am part of a device that measures extremism. That's all that the meme seems to really be saying, is ultimately like, hey, it's God and realism and the three parts of American politics, normal American politics, which is liberalism, moderate centrism, and conservatism. And the thing that we are weighing is leftism and rightism. And our determination is everything comes to balance out of the two sides. It seems to be a mixed metaphor saying the grievance politics of the left and the grievance politics of the right are equal in weight. I don't know what that means, but yeah, Burden, am I overanalyzing it, or are we looking at an image that doesn't really say much?
Well, and that's the thing about this. It's sort of crazy making, because you're basically like trying to decipher these like the Rosetta Stone. What I found interesting about this is that fundamentally he is making in this a claim that would make a medieval monarch blush, which is basically, I have been appointed by God to divine truth. Me, Jimbo Lindsay, former male masseuse, have been given a mission from God, which I don't believe in, by the way, to impart his truth into realism and put all of politics on a scale.
Yes.
To compare, one set of grievances against the other. So we also have a number of pie charts, right?
Oh, okay. Wait, before we get to these, Burden, this is a good thing. We don't often have serious conversations, but go back to this one for me. So I think one thing that would elucidate the image more is if you were to show the balancing mechanism at the top, the fulcrum or whatever you call the part at the top that spans both sides, it would seem to me the image would make its point more clearly if the bars that are holding the weights were bent, or you could tell that they were overweighed, right? Because doesn't the meme seem to be saying that realism is subject to ideological craziness, and that the scale is burdened by the heavy weight of idealism on either the left or the right? Does that comport with you? Does that make sense?
That would make more sense. You also have the secondary issue that the whole point of a infographic is to quickly and concisely convey information, right? This not only suffers from the sort of mucho texto fallacy,
but yes,
also
it does. Yes,
this
it
is
does.
genuinely inscrutable, right?
You
and I are both like effectively casting into the void to try and guess what this means. It's very unclear. I think that you are correct, but also, is this just a diagnostic piece? Like, this is how it is? Is this how it ought to be?
I almost think it is diagnostic. And obviously, from the perspective of an atheist, the irony of it is thick because, and I am a metaphysical realist. I consider myself of the tradition of Aristotle and Aquinas, as many Catholics do. So I consider myself a metaphysical realist. Now, the irony, though, is of an atheist posting this, although obviously this is not a commentary on the meme, but of the poster, is metaphysical realism. The basic axiom is that reality exists independently of the mind, and that idealism being its rough opposite, that reality is fundamentally a mental or spiritual product. So if you're putting God as the foundation of reality, to an atheist, isn't that idealism? That it is fundamentally a fiction that is the product of the reality, right? So the diagram, the poster of the diagram being an atheist is accidentally seems to be endorsing a thing that it would otherwise place at the negative. I mean, what both the left and the leftists and the rightists both have these grand metaphysical claims at the base of reality. A Marxist, for instance, historical dialectic is at the basis of social reality. On the right, there's different branches of what the right would say. But for instance, one of the slogans of the Nazis was "God is with us." So isn't that an example of the abuse of God as a metaphysical image? Isn't it putting God at the bottom of reality, the base of reality, stupid for an atheist to do?
Well, of course, because ultimately you're doing the exact same thing. All right, you are basing reality in what you know to be a fiction, which seemingly is the same flaw in idealism. This will not be the first time, Berto, that we catch old Jimbo
looking at this going, and again, I just want to say, like, I am a theistic realist. I believe God is the grounds of the objective mind independent reality that we're experiencing. So it's not I'm saying you can't have this opinion, but it's weird for an atheist to post this because they're saying the reality literally can't function without God, presumably while also not believing in God. And I mean, so either way, you're looking at an image that's saying both sides are extreme. and I'm very smart in the middle. Also, the thing that's holding up my metaphysical framework is something I don't believe in. So it's very
like
odd.
if you were to draw this accurately,
Yeah.
what it actually would be is God would be the shaft, and then both the base and the buckets on either side would be labeled idealism.
Yeah,
in which case it's
right
idealism all the way down. You know,
Right. The only thing that is measurable is idealism is something else you could take out. It's a very unusual. I don't think a scale makes sense to use in this image, which seems to be saying reality is a measurable experience and idealism is simply a weight to be measured, but not reality in itself, which I think actually is a valid commentary, but the image doesn't make the point clearly because, as you said, mucho texto. And you know what the mucho texto is? Theories and grievances.
Yes, literally.
Because it's floating out in space, and I guess ostensibly the things that are holding the part of the measurement is theories and grievances. But this is the mucho texto that it's suffering from, is because apparently theories and grievances are now part of the measuring device rather than part of what's being measured, aka not reality, but secondary to it. So this is, mucho texto, mucho I went to college, mucho I'm very smart. That's kind of what you're seeing here.
Oh,
I have to say, Bird, and I also want to say, I hate analyzing retarded images this way. I really do, because I start to feel like I'm the very smart guy who's analyzing this stuff. So let's get off of this image, because there's a lot to be said about it. But at some point you say too much and the audience starts going, aren't you just a really smart idiot who's thinking too much about this? So yeah, let's move forward. Wait,
so we have a lot of these.
You have to watch the video. Listeners, go to Burden's YouTube or Burden, whatever your preferred video platform is here, because you need to be watching this, listeners. You really need to be watching this. Otherwise, you're missing a core of the thing we can't experience.
So there's also a treasure trove of there's a treasure trove of these Venn diagrams, right? Which are incredibly
doesn't
funny.
This all just kind of tell you what the real base concern is, and that everything around it is kind of a rhetoric to complexify what the base concern is, which I'm not saying is an illegitimate concern. I'm just saying this is a lot of words to use to make your position seem more thought out than other similar positions.
Well, because you'll notice there is a reference to a certain ethno-sectarian group in basically every image. So we've got on screen is the Iberian lawyers, as Dahl puts it, where we have kind of three different Venn diagrams, basically making the same point. The quote unquote woke light and the woke left, and also Islam are basically the same. But this one, oh shoot, let me get rid of these. I think is particularly funny because there's one more inclusion on this one in the middle. So we have one circle on the left, the woke right.
It's so aggravating because it's in such bad faith. The other one that you had was in particularly bad faith, but we can wait to get to that one, I guess. It's just in such bad faith.
Also, this person doesn't understand how Venn diagrams work.
Right.
Because the left side says woke left, the right side says woke right. The left side says cis white Christian men are problematic. The woke right says Jews, liberals, and neocons control the world. By the way, Bird, have we gone to war with Iran yet?
Not today. I mean, we're getting there. But not today.
No comment. And then in the middle, right, what they have in common, and this is labeled woke, which if both boxes are woke, you'd assume it would just be one circle because they would share everything. But it says blaming class enemies, and then in smaller text, which I think is quite funny, hates boomers.
Hates boomers. Oh, bless. Now, okay, let's just take these statements for what they are. I want to do that. Okay, the woke left says cis heterosexual, right? Cis, is that what the het?
Yeah, I think that's what that means. It's a
cisgendered,
illusion.
Heterosexual, white, Christian men are the problem. Now,
no, they are problematic. It's an even weaker claim.
Are problematic. Okay, you're right. And you're right. And it is a weaker claim. You're right. Okay, that's the weak claim. Now, the right says, Qataris, because I don't know what you can say on YouTube, so we'll just say
We'll go
Qataris.
with Qataris.
Okay, Qataris, liberals, and neocons control the world. Now, immediately, categorically different statements, as you said. One is simply saying one group that exists is problematic. The other group is saying 3 groups control the whole world. So right there, category distinction. But apparently the 2 groups that are separately believing these things believe the same thing ultimately, which is there is a class enemy to be blamed. For what? What are they being blamed for? I don't know. But yeah, there is no dichotomy here because the categories are so far apart.
Well, and also,
unusual.
One may ask, well, if creating classes of political enemies is the issue, what do we make of the term woke? Because seemingly, you have just done the same thing and made a worse category.
Right. And what a great point. It's why you should actually, what would be funny is if you moved the words woke left and woke right into the bubbles, would make a lot more sense than rather than being outside of the bubbles. Like, yeah, like if you had them in the bubble, then exactly what you said would also be evident from by the meme itself. Also, what's wrong with blaming a class of people for something? I don't understand where this whole tendency is from. If the class substantially as a class is participating in something that's against you, what's wrong with doing that? I don't understand. Isn't that how antipathy works? I mean, okay. So isn't it the case that terrorists are bad to us, you and me? I mean,
yes.
Like if we lived in a country where there was a class called terrorists, that would be a bad thing, right? That wouldn't make us woke to go, terrorists are bad, right?
Well,
obviously,
imagine
who you are defining as terrorists obviously is what's in question, but blaming a class enemy is, if that's woke, then the very basis of determining any enmity at all is woke. So
that doesn't
like
sound
you
very
just
realist,
said,
Bird.
I guess. I mean, I get. See, the problem with James Lindsay types is they aren't merely realists. They smuggle a certain kind of realism and call it all realism, which is kind of what libertarians do, or kind of what anarchists do with all forms of libertarianism. They go, our version of the thing is the only correct thing, but they neglect to realize the only way you got to your version of the thing was because it was a descendant of a less explicated version of the thing. So here you have, actually, can you go to the other one? Because I just want to point out my thought on this. The one with lots of words, the black and white one with, yes. So this one here. Okay. So this one that we're looking at here. And this is the example of it. Admires National Socialism. Government redistribution is good if it's called distributism. Now,
by the way, when we were talking about the anti-Catholic bigotry, they really have a bone to pick with distributism.
Of course.
Short of my buddy Dave, who calls himself the distributist.
Right.
And has never really publicly commented on that system of thought. Can you think of really anyone who describes themselves as a distributist, short of like Hilaire Belloc and like certain writings of G.K. Chesterton?
Yeah, it's, now I don't want to just like debunk you, but I would say Catholic social teaching is distributist. I would say proper Catholic social teaching is distributist. So people who call themselves Catholic and follow Catholic social teaching, I think you'd find in practice are distributist. Their preferences are distributist. So actually the meme is basically saying most Catholics or any Catholic who's following Catholic social teaching for the past 150 years is basically a distributist. Now, again, there's specificities and there's a need to update over time. My problem with the image is
Your singular
anybody
issue,
who's
Bird.
not libertarian is woke.
Yes, literally. And even then, very
That's
tactical.
all that it's saying.
A very tactical invocation of libertarianism, because we'll find out later they hate Rothbard and they hate Hoppe. Like in particular, they burn those men in effigy.
Okay, so
Which at a certain point you're like,
is this just all like Cato Institute? Are we going to find out that all of this stuff that we're seeing is just rhetoric to bully people who are outside of the regime's way of thinking? Is that what we're going to find out? Because the instantiated regime of, and I'm using the words here, and I know that I'll get pushback, especially from my audience, but the whole Reaganite thing was, the best representation of libertarianism that our U.S. government has seen thus far, maybe until today. And I know some people have different definition, but okay, Reagan and Greenspan were libertarians. The messaging was libertarian. The practices were libertarian, barring a few instances where you could argue otherwise. Not Rothbardian, not Hoppian, just basic libertarian. Liberalism, some people would call it, right? So are we going to find out that at the end of this thought-terminating, enemy-creating dialectic is just a way to bully people into saying Margaret Thatcher was a real American and Ronald Reagan was a real American, and this is the only kind of American you can really be, is you can either be Ronald Reagan or you can be Jimmy Carter. Is that what we're going to ultimately find out? Is that this is just an advocacy for the politics of 40 years ago?
Quite literally, yes. There's other things I think are quite funny. The equivocation made between the woke left and the woke right. So on the left side, it says everyone should look the same, in brackets, ugly, which I think is pretty amusing.
That's really odd. Yeah.
And on the right side,
a little bit of spandrel in there, almost.
Yeah. Everyone should think.
I didn't know leftists read spandrel. That's good.
He's quite woke right as well. I just thought that was funny. Even the equivocation is quite messy. Even in
what's the right wing equivocation?
Everyone should think the same. All legal immigration is bad. I like that they've sort of smuggled in the premise that the right doesn't care about how people look, but how they think. Which,
okay,
if you believe they're obsessed with racial identity, I feel like we found a contradiction in their own work here. So don't worry, Berto. Things keep going.
Oh, God.
Describe this image to me.
We're seeing a straight line horizontally and a bent line vertically. The top of the bend says woke left. The bottom of the bend says woke right. The poles are left and right. But it's not centered.
Right. It's far to the left because, again, the woke right is inherently left.
Right. And also the X and Y, or rather the Y boundary hasn't been defined.
Yeah, I really got nothing on this one. I just find it baffling.
I don't either. This is so weird, dude. This is the weirdest one so far. By these three memes, I don't know what these people think. Actually, I do. Unfortunately, I think I actually do know what they think, and it's a lot less complicated than the memes make it seem like it is.
Pretty much. Okay. Explain this to me.
Here we go. Okay. So let me tell you a story about philosophy.
Oh, they get into that. They're big fans of that.
At the beginning of philosophy, there was the woke left and the post-liberal right. Now, the woke left is ultimately just Marcuse. If you know Marcuse was hot on the college campuses. And what Marcuse wanted everybody to do was, if we as leftists want to win, we got to march our way through these institutions, and we have to redefine what these institutions are teaching people. Now, Marcuse led to Marx and Hess. Okay. All right. Sure. Because the arrows are pointing to these things, right? So they're not pointing against the, okay. So Marcuse leads you to Marx. I'm just going to say Marx. And Marx Well, Marx was reading Kant and Hegel and Goethe and Spinoza. And Spinoza and Goethe and Hegel and Kant, well, they're all just nominalists or esoteric pagans. Hold on. Hold on.
which is exactly the same thing.
Wait a second. Hold on. Because this is, I don't know if this is what you think this is. Okay. Post-liberal right. They all come obviously out of Buchanan. That would be Pat, right? Pat Buchanan, yes. Right? Who I guess has way more influence than I thought he did. But sure. Okay. The post-liberal right comes out of Buchanan. And obviously Buchanan comes directly out of Spengler and Schmidt. And you know who Spengler and Schmidt were reading Kant, Hegel, Goethe, and Spinoza. And those guys, again, nominalists. Okay, Burden, I just want to talk to you, not looking at the meme. Okay, first of all, the meme is saying, if I draw lines in a certain way, isn't that true?
That's basically it.
That's what the meme is, obviously. That's the rhetorical trick of the meme. Never mind that Marx also has commentaries on Plato. Okay, where's Plato? Marx had commentaries on Aristotle. Where's Aristotle? Well, you can't include Aristotle because Aristotle was a metaphysical realist. So we don't want to include Aristotle. Schmidt, commentaries on Aristotle. Well, you don't want to include Aristotle in the Kant, Hegel, Goethe, Spinoza box because Aristotle was not a nominalist. He was a realist. So we can't write him in. So what you have is a case of, isn't me drawing lines around stuff true? So that's what that is.
Here's what I think it works off of. I think it works off of an audience who actually has never read any of these people and doesn't really understand how ideas work. So the whole game, I'm trying to be rude, but I mean, I think that's what it is. Because the whole game that Lindsay played with the woke left is basically creating bibliographies, right? Connecting one idea to another. So he would say, oh, this egregious social policy in blah, blah, blah public school in Biloxi, Mississippi is actually because of, certain ideas you see from, Herbert Marcuse or, some of the other thinkers of the French New Left. And that's actually a fairly easy, direct ideological lineage to plot, because if someone went to college where their professor wrote a bunch of books about how much they like Marcuse and took all their ideas from him, okay, fair enough, right? You can say that idea came from that. One, that's not an argument. You were just describing, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, very quickly, he reached the end of the map, right? And so to keep the business model going, he had to keep digging, right? And the problem is, I don't think he particularly understands what he's talking about. So, I have a certain amount of affection for Buchanan as a political figure, right? I've taken a lot from the paleoconservatives because I think that what they did was fundamentally honorable. Right. After the Cold War, they argued our great quest is done. Now we go back to being a normal country. We're not a world empire anymore.
Sure.
And I think that if they had won, we would be in much better straits now.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
he's not as far as his writing per se, particularly influential past that. There are other neoconservative thinkers, even some of them you could connect to Marcuse. Think of my buddy Paul Gottfried, who actually studied under Marcuse and who his thinking, right? Whether you want to look about fascism, the career of a concept, or anti-fascism, the course of a crusade, are seminal texts on the quote unquote post-liberal right. Even figures like Thomas 77 pull from him a lot. So there is a version of this meme with all the arrows pointing the opposite direction, because that's just inexcusable. I really cannot figure out why these arrows are pointed in this direction. But the problem is, the conclusion is nonsense.
Yeah.
The conclusion is absolute nonsense.
Well,
right? The idea that these are nominal esoteric pagans, it's okay, well, sure.
Right. That part is nonsense. Yes.
Also, if you're an atheist, what do you care about pagans?
Can I know. Okay. Can I tell you what I am realizing about this meme? This meme is you. So you brought me on to see anti-Catholic bigotry, which we've seen a little bit of, but I mean, this meme ostensibly is 100% a Thomistic narrative about the decline of the West, because the tell is the fact that everything converges ultimately on nominalism as the root of all evil, which obviously the story being that William of Ockham broke the medieval synthesis between the classical pagan metaphysic and the Israelite religion. He broke that medieval synthesis and severed the connection between language and the description of reality. Right. So everything, and this is something Thomists say, they blame the whole Reformation on William of Ockham. I know you've heard this. So yes. What's weird about this obviously is James Lindsay and the crowd, who I think the crowd is called like the New Discourse, if I'm not mistaken, that whole crowd of people, the New Atheists, the New Discourse, they're all atheists. So the move that's being made in this meme is tracing everything that's wrong with modernity back through nominalism, which, by the way, you can't escape classical liberalism as being a part of this diagnosis either.
Yes.
So that's what's weird is regular liberalism, as comes out of the English tradition, and Hobbes was an aggressively anti-Catholic diagnosis. I mean, Hobbes was aggressively anti-Catholic. And so the Catholics feel the same way about classical liberalism as and Locke was aggressively anti-Catholic, and the Puritans were aggressively anti-Catholic and very liberal in the classical sense. So it's just weird that, to me, this is the kind of, Ed Fazer could come up with this kind of a meme, right? It's a framework that only makes sense if you think Aquinas had it right, and everything since then basically has fallen away from Aquinas, which is, I agree with the meme, actually. I agree with the meme we're looking at, except by omission. It's missing a lot of different parts.
Especially when you combine the last couple images, which we saw, where the real issue was, the desire to mandate a state religion. And it's like, okay, well, what were the conditions on the ground before the rise of nominalism? Was it a liberal one? Did you live in a liberal order? It's like, no. So within your own logic, and I am not this, but these people should be, for lack of a better word, like thrown in altar Catholics, right?
But that's what I'm saying is, I don't think we should discount the possibility that some Catholics are moving into James Lindsay's way of thinking. That they are in the same way that Leo Strauss attracted many Catholics. Are we just looking at neo-Straussianism? Are we looking at James Lindsay creating a new Strauss? And the reason why I say that is because the meme that we are looking at is redefining the narrative by omission. Because properly speaking, if you included classical liberalism into this, aka the thing that James Lindsay ultimately is a regime liberal. He is a liberal from 40 years ago, aka a neoliberal. That's what we're seeing here. By omission, the meme has decided, well, that group doesn't need to be talked about. We don't need to talk about the English liberal tradition here, even though, properly speaking, as you say, the throne and altar Catholics, they blame liberalism. They blame the Reformation. They blame nominalism, ultimately, prior to the Reformation, for this break. So it's weird because it's Straussian in that it's meant to capture Catholics into something they don't actually, properly speaking, believe by making Catholics into neoliberals. That's kind of what we're seeing here. And the only reason we're seeing that is by omission. It's like, let me tell you all of the bad things about communism. Let me tell you all the bad things about fascism. You know how communism and fascism are bad? Well, that's because ultimately they trace their belief systems to Hegel's idealism, and then prior to that, to Kant's breakaway from the classical tradition, which is ultimately rooted in the Reformation, which is ultimately rooted in nominalism. And you're going, well, I believe all of that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. But the omission is, let me now tell you about why you should be like a Reaganite. And you go, hold on, wait a second. That's a part of these traditions too. You just omitted that arm of the philosophy from the discussion so as to focus me on your two enemies. You just circumscribed your two enemies, but you're a part of the same dialectic as the two people that you are an enemy to. But you don't want me to know that. You just want me to focus on the fascists and the communists. You don't want me to be thinking about the capitalists also, or we'll call them the capitalists, or properly. And I think Nick Land has outlined the best version of this: the Gnostic Calvinists. That is the actual third arm of this, is the James Lindsay types, the what Nick Land would call the Gnostic Calvinists, or the capitalists, or the Anglo-Protestant tradition. So again, this is what we're looking at, is actually a very Catholic meme, but it's omitting the reason why it's Catholic, because it's omitting the third pole of liberalism, which all of social Catholic teaching was, in the 1800s, in the 19th century, as it was formally written down, was meant to address not just communism, not just fascism, but also capitalism. And that's, I don't understand. So Burden, tell me, as a non-Catholic, do you see the omission of the third arm here? And if so, from your perspective, why is that omission invalid? Why should that third pole also be on here? That's what I would like to know as a non-Catholic.
Well, because fundamentally, right, the project here is not an intellectually honest description of current events. It is a post-fact justification for why James Lindsay in particular should be allowed to act as sort of a Bill Buckley-esque figure on the right. Why he should be the arbiter of all decisions. And the actual specific ideology that he and many others believe, and we may or may not get into this, is sort of this schizophrenic combination of an atheist view of the Scottish realists, right? Who they quite like.
Yes.
But the problem is, again, right, this did not spring out of nothing, right? And many of these thinkers influenced some who later would turn into, quote unquote, the woke. So fundamentally, it's not an intellectually honest exercise. The point of this is not to actually map reality, ironically enough, given his pretense to rationalism. The whole thing is a desire to, how can I tell my audience that the people making fun of me on the internet from my right are just as bad as the blue-haired 19-year-old female college students that I made my bones dunking on social media. That's the whole point.
Yeah. I think, what's weird is we can admit there are racial collectivists on the right.
Yes.
Now, you and I don't fall into those categories. And yet, somehow racial collectivism is moved into the same thing as distributism. Now, I don't know about you, Burden. I'm sure you've got thoughts on this. Catholics really aren't racial collectivists, I think, as we're seeing by the great letter recently put out by the USCCB. Catholics really aren't racial collectivists.
Well, and that's why this is such a messy category, right? When woke includes everyone from kind of like race first pagans to, and we'll get to this later, the pharaohs of Egypt to like Starbucks baristas to Catholic social teaching. It's like, okay, well, this category means nothing. This is just the unifying factor is I don't like you, which, again, if we have, fully accepted kind of a postmodern view of politics, which I don't think you have, Jimbo, or at least you would be unwilling to admit, then fair enough, right? But if you have this pretense to labels meaning something, language being correlated to, a knowable and a knowable reality unbound by human consciousness, we find ourselves in a very different position. I want to keep going, Bird, because we've got so many more images. This
is so unusual, man. The stuff that you are showing me is contrary to what I understand about philosophy. I am so confused by an atheist who is essentially like a Humean common sense realist, right? Like that's ultimately the metaphysical position that I think is being advocated for. Hume's whole thing was let's ditch Aquinas because we can just use ordinary experience and sentiment to establish how reality works for us, moral reality works for us. Yet we are seeing a functionally Aristotelian Thomist critique of modern reality. It's borrowing from the Thomist diagnosis, but it's offering, as you said, this kind of Scottish Enlightenment prescription, which is that we just need common sense and science. So it's speaking out of both sides of the mouth. On the one hand, it's saying God is the basis of reality. And on the other hand, it's saying, well, we don't want God to be too involved in our present day real circumstances. That's what's so weird about it is for a person to say God is the basis of reality, and then to also say, well, we don't want to get too distributist about stuff. It's like, wait, hold on. What do we actually believe is reality here? Because
God
it's
is an
not,
ANCAP bird.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
So this is just a placeholder. It's kind of just generic liberal cringe. The next one, bird, legitimately the most baffling image I have ever seen. It is a sort of bizarre image macro.
Oh,
so we
boy.
have
Okay.
Several
lot
memes
going
put
on
together.
here.
Well, we'll scroll down through the top. For the new Christian intellectual, I didn't notice that. I'm going to go search that because one of the things that's really sinister about this is
this is fucking Straussian. That's all this is. This is Strauss. This is recapturing the Christian right. That's all this is.
Yes. So
for the service of the Qataris is the second half of the sentence. Because James Lindsay probably has something on his computer that makes him beholden to a group of people who are really good at finding the bad things on your computer. Is that what we're seeing? Is that all this is? This is just neo-Straussian run by a guy who's got some skeletons in his closet? I mean, is that all this is? Really, so, like, is this just a very advanced rhetoric this is weird, man. Also, the symbol on the bottom. Are you seeing underneath the arrow? What's going on there?
Which, but if you've gone through the same Pizzagate deep dive that I and many others have,
what is going on there?
The past couple weeks, that'll seem familiar. Okay, so to be fully fair, this isn't from Lindsay. This is from, I think he goes by Classical Liberal on X. Great follow. Highly recommend it.
Okay.
So
and he made this in a Lindsay-ian mode? Or okay.
Yes. So
but you say he's a great follow.
Oh, 100%. He's hilarious.
Okay.
We have, again, a political spectrum, right? We have on mutually exclusive principles, statism, capitalism. The right side is defined by free markets, the left side socialism. What is the farthest left on the spectrum of
ancient Egypt?
Yep. And then it is communism, fascism, the 2019 U.S. mixed economy, which I find it kind of funny that the 2019 U.S. mixed economy is roughly equidistant from ancient Egypt and the original American Constitution. Just fundamentally, I find that funny. So again, it's sort of a political spectrum. I don't know what this spiral symbol means, but you see it quite often. So I guess maybe it's supposed to be the spell of dialectics.
Check. I'm back. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Where effectively a wizard named Dialectic uses magic to frog march you to the left, I think.
Wow.
I'm not really entirely sure. Otherwise, here on the bottom after the wizard drawing, we have quite possibly the most confusing image yet.
What is with all of the spirals? What is going on with that?
I think that means dialectics.
Oh, okay. There was a lot of dialectics being spoken of in those emails, I guess.
Yes. So what we have here is a guy in a boat labeled personal liberty. We have, is this character called Siren Head? Why is he there?
That's Siren Head. That's correct. That's a creepypasta. Yeah.
Why? Who knows? And we have a a beautiful mermaid labeled both leftism and Christian nationalism, and this is labeled the exoteric, and a curlicue arrow going down through communism to a bunch of angry fish people labeled fascism and the esoteric.
It's oh, dude. What I've realized is they are well, okay. Okay, what I've realized is the people objecting to nominalism are having a very difficult ability of parsing language and image because they put words in places in the image that have no meaning.
Yes.
Every meme is the same meme, which is saying anything other than pure capitalism is ultimately nominalism, which is ultimately totalitarian Egyptian Gnosticism. So it doesn't matter where any of the words are located. It doesn't matter. This is almost like Mystery Babylon, dude. This is almost like monomythic Mystery Babylon stuff. This is like how they think. Oh my God.
We have another
individualism. There's the word. Okay. I was waiting for when that word would come up. Because they call themselves rational individualists, I think, is one of the things you'll hear a lot from the Lindsay crowd, is the atomic individual type of people.
And the idea is, yet again, that fascism, which is functionally identical to communism, are squeezing out this sort of individualism. We're coming up on time, so I'll go through and select some of the best. Oh, yeah. By the way,
another word is objectivism. Oh, these are all objectivists. That's what this is. This is just objectivism. Okay, now I know what I'm dealing with, and I know why it's so philosophically hard-headed. They were seeing new objectivism.
So this is where we get to the anti-Catholic stuff. So this woman, CJ the Palmer Worm, she's great. I follow her on Substack and on YouTube. She does like AI shorts, kind of going over this material. But I will let you, I'll let you read this one. Michael O'Fallon, very sinister individual connected to some very suspicious people. He is lawsuit happy, so that is all alleged. Do your own research. But again, we see the connection of theosophism to the Catholic Church. Yeah. But I'll have you, as I struggle to use Photoshop, I'll have you read this one, Bird.
Okay. Are Catholics aware that St. Michael has been a major part of theosophist doctrine for transitioning society into the age of Aquarius? Blavatsky, Steiner, etc. Catholics, do you have any discernment left? Can you not see when aspects of your own doctrine are co-opted to Luciferian ends? Where is that theological line delineating between Catholicism and Luciferianism? Your faith is being sublated into dialectical pantheism, in parentheses, evolving perennialism, by your own Pope's admission and approval. Not enough of you are discerning the wolves' operation within your ranks for far too long. I mean,
what does that mean?
Who has been complaining about Frankist infiltration into our religion forever? I mean, was it anyone other than Catholics? I don't know. Was it anyone else?
Well, I mean, there's actually a particular Catholic and my favorite woman of color and Mad Libs headline creator.
Mine too. Right. Well, she's making quite a larger point than the one that I was just making, for what it's worth. My point was just a group infiltrated another group. Hers was that group has infiltrated everything in society and nobody else has, by the way. That was
including her dreams, by the way.
I know. Oh my God. Don't even get me started on her dreams. Look, that post that you showed me is there's a lot in that post and we don't have the time to go into it. My one thought about the post is simply, we have been complaining about this. That's all that I'll say. It has not gone unnoticed.
Well, and it's especially weird because many of those people who would have made that complaint did it in a way that would not be would not be acceptable to O'Fallon and co. Right?
Of course, yeah.
which I find just incredibly amusing. So we got so many of these. Oh, I accidentally did this one twice. So one more, man.
I'm sure, honestly, Burden, I'm sure anybody listening to this is so bamboozled as we are, is so bamboozled. They're probably begging for this episode to be over.
Good. I want them to beg. I have developed a disdain for my audience, and so this is why I keep doing it. Yeah, this is why I thought this one was funny. So this is a new term. Twoke.
Twoke.
2 tribes, 1 mindset. Tribal, woke right. Tribal, woke left. All the points are basically the same, but the word twoke, I think, is particularly amusing, and also, again, not particularly understanding.
I don't know, man. This is really weird to me. Is equity, safe spaces, language codes is contrasted with purity, loyalty, conformity. Okay, where did loyalty come in?
I was about to say, those just sound like virtues, at least 2 out of 3.
Purity, obviously, purity depends on how that word is being used. And conformity, I guess similarly, how is that word being used? But loyalty is a sort of rhetorically strong word. Like almost everybody thinks loyalty is a good thing. It's so weird. A lot of this is, perplex language games. A lot of this is like, I wish I had the right word for it, but there's a thing that objectivists love to do this when you argue with objectivists, but largely anybody who's trying to bamboozle you, gish gallop. There's a lot of gish galloping that kind of goes on in these memes. As you said in another way, a word salad or mucho texto, they kind of just load a lot of words in when it's not necessary. It's not really what they mean. And you're kind of left scratching your head and going, well, what do you believe? Because you've just said loyalty is a bad thing. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's just so unusual to me. Moral absolute. Oh my God. Okay, sorry.
Weird thing.
Staring at this thing.
Because they seem to believe that the tribe, that is a hard word to say. The twoke right, if you will, has apparently controls the engine of state cultural enforcement.
I think by that they must mean like YouTube and podcasts, which we kind of do dominate, but I don't know what they mean by state, I don't know what they mean by state. I don't think, see, again, when libertarians use the word state, what they really mean is coercion. So they kind of lump 2 words together that otherwise have nuanced meanings, even if in function they do the same thing. So state cultural enforcement might just mean the ability to set what is appropriate in government by cultural enforcement. Is that what that means? I don't know, man. Again, this is like an info hazard. You think too hard about it and you start to think harder than the person who made it. And that's just a trap.
So Bird, where can people find you, man?
Nowhere. Don't find me.